At a time when other countries are competing with us like never before, when students around the world, in Beijing, China, or Bangalore, India, are working harder than ever and doing better than ever, your success in school is not just going to determine your success, it's going to determine America's success in the 21st century. So you've got an obligation to yourselves, and America has an obligation to you to make sure you're getting the best education possible.
We don't need no education.
What is education reform? Education reform is a change in the way that people are learning and are taught in schools. Essentially, it is exactly what it says, a reform in education.
This is a topic that is becoming more of an issue as technology advances and the world is becoming more connected. Yet people feel that American schools are falling behind the rest of the world in education.
Through our documentary and what we have learned, it is obvious that while most agree that some sort of reform is necessary, the views regarding the federal government's involvement are split.
Do you feel that your education will be applicable to you in the future?
Some of it.
We interviewed a student panel on what they thought of their own education.
Yeah, I think some of it. I think some of it we really aren't learning. Some of the things we really need to be learning. Some of it just kind of useless.
Useless? Should any bit of our education really be considered useless to our students?
The traditional school structure that was created back in really 1920 has not changed. When you have kids moving from bell to bell, that is the factory model. That is training workers to know when the lunch bell rings, you take your lunch break, and when it rings again, you go back to the assembly line. We don't have those jobs anymore in this country. So training kids to still think that way and to think that I compartmentalize my work in 40-minute blocks of time is a very poor training for kids to be ready for the world they're going to enter.
A big issue that our students, teachers, and administrators have is standardized testing. Thanks to the No Child Left Behind Act passed in 2001, all states have some degree of standardized testing that each student must pass to either move further in their education or graduate. Neil McCluskey, Associate Director of the Center for Educational Freedom at the Cato Institute, explains one of these issues.
Things like the regions, especially, is an excellent example, have ended up in many cases being deceptive. But one thing, again, the idea is that basically everybody should know the exact same thing at the roughly the exact same time.
The problem, of course, is not that there is testing, as there needs to be some sort of gauge. The problem is what is on the test and what is being taught.
What I would like to personally see is more real-life applications being taught in math. Unfortunately, with standardized tests, that limits our time into doing those types of activities. I think we could be doing more with our students than trying to teach to a standardized test.
The way they are now, I think standardized tests, I guess, are better than not having any way to do it, but I feel like they definitely have to be improved and they have to reflect the real-life challenges that Americans are going to be facing.
Yeah, and they don't reflect our real scores, because they, screw them and, curve them, you know?
Mm-hmm. Be very different tests, less predictable, so they cannot be taught to the test. They need to measure critical thinking. We need to use tools like video game, which can measure all kinds of skills and give a record of a student's mental processes.
I think that the standardized tests maybe shouldn't cover as much curriculum in math, for example, as they do, because I feel that students become a jack of all trades and master of none. There needs to be less topics taught with more of a mastery level in each topic. And I think every student deserves an education that's appropriate for themselves. So I think at a certain point, standardized tests, I don't think we need.
There's also the controversial idea that students are not interested in their learning and are therefore not benefiting from it. To put it simply, they're bored.
For me, the goal would be to look at changing the experiences. I would love to be able to look at different ways of assessing students and different ways of instructing students so that the classroom doesn't become this kind of sterile sitting in rows environment for kids, but that students are in classes really working on problems that are meaningful to them, doing authentic style research that is important to them, and through that work getting the essential skills that you need to be successful in college and careers. It's a better way of teaching, it's a more engaging way of teaching, and the reality is we'll probably have much more successful students than trying to fit all these round pegs into square holes because the standardized tests say we have to.
Obviously, as a country, we need to become competitive again, much more than we are. We're losing the game because our children are falling more and more behind. Our public school system is crumbling.
In the Dallas Times Herald study, students from selected schools in the U.S. as well as other countries were tested to measure their relative achievement in the areas of mathematics, science, and geography. Here are the scores. These are all percentages of the correct answers among 12-year-olds taking tests in each country. In the area of math, Japan topped the list with 50.2, but the U.S. was all the way down here with 25.3. In science, Sweden topped the list with 55.4%, but the U.S. was still towards the bottom with 43.7%. In geography, the U.S. did better, but we're still not at the top. The U.S. had 45.8%, while Sweden again topped the list with 54.1%. This may seem alarming, but not everyone agrees.
We're not that far behind the rest of the world in education, although it's a very difficult thing to tell. So, but we sure don't do really well, especially considering how much we spend. So there are huge problems in American education, but we don't actually have ultimately the data we need to say that we are the best in the world, we're the worst in the world, or we're in the middle.
So what should the federal government be doing? The idea of a national curriculum has been proposed, but again, it is not a topic that people are agreeing upon.
Develop whatever curriculum they think is necessary along with the determine their own standards. The federal government should be a resource to whether or not that's to collect best practices or to set minimum standards that schools can meet with regard to best practices or anything else. It's the way the federal government and particularly the Department of Education can be a resource so that others can emulate what works best.
I think a national curriculum is important as long as there also allows the flexibility of states or teachers to also teach what they want to teach.
Go the exact opposite direction of a national curriculum.
We will never have a national curriculum here in the United States of America.
Though a national curriculum idea isn't unanimous, it is certain that the federal government should somehow be involved.
I definitely think so.
During this project, we have learned that some type of reform is definitely needed. Our country is falling too far behind, and it is only going to hurt us even more as time goes on. As much as this is true, it seems that no one has created a lasting solution to this problem. Perhaps we should return to the basics: life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness.
What people want out of education is generally two things. They want to be able to make money and be successful in life, but they also want to be happy in life.